The legends are true. Overwhelming power!
Sauce of destiny.
Yes! The most legendary sauce has arrived as McDonald's transforms into the anime world of WickDonald's. The greatest flavors unite in all new savory chili McDonald's sauce to make your 10-piece Wick Nuggets, fries, and Sprite ultra-powerful. Unlock manga comics with every meal and sit down for a new anime short every week only at WickDonald's. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba, go!
At participating McDonald's for a limited time while supplies last.
I walk a straight line, shackled and chained. Oh, gruesome Gertie is calling my name. There is no mercy in this penitentiary. Just ask the Hillstream Gang, or Angola 3. Die inside these walls, inside the wire. And when the wolf cries, I know it's over. Oh, bloody Angola. Oh, bloody Angola.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Bloody
Angola
Podcast, 142 years in the making.
Complete story of America's bloodiest prison.
And I'm Jim Chapman.
And I'm Woody Overton.
And Woody, tell us what we're talking about today.
Well, y'all, this might be a little controversial, or Jimbo, because
we're no stranger to that.
Yeah, and once again, well, we'll say SWIM, or I don't even know what the acronym would be for you finding this shit, but it says confidential, and we always told you we're going to bring you different stuff, and I think this is fascinating because, of course, I'm always fascinated with the death penalty and everything else that happens. But what we have for you, and I'll read it, the title, which is the Louisiana State Penitentiary Execution Manual Holders, and it's basically, y'all, we're going to be talking about all the steps and everything has to be lined out in order, right? There's,
especially for executions, because those are so legally tracked,
right?
I guess you could say,
and it's a lot that leads up to it, and a lot that goes into it. But a lot of this is really, really interesting. Some of it we're going to skip over because it's just self-explanatory. But it says confidential now. Evidently, it's not that confidential because it's on the internet, right? So it's not like we broke into Angola and stole their shit, y'all.
Right.
This came off the internet, and very interesting. So let's start with the executions, and we're not going to give all the phone numbers for the people that are on the team
we won't
and
put
everything
that
else.
out there.
But there's chain of command in the execution. Of course, the governor has the final say so, and under him his general counsel and his PIO, public information officer. Under that, you have the Secretary of the Department of Corrections and Deputy Secretary, Chief Operations, their general counsel, Director of Communications. Then it goes down to the Warden of Angola and Deputy Wardens and the Deputy Warden Security and Programming. Then it goes down to Public Information Officer. Naturally, they have to, deal with the media and all that. And then victims, witnesses and inmate witnesses, because you get to have both sides and they're sitting on opposite sides of the room. And of course, under the Deputy Warden Security is the execution team and then the Sheriff of West Feliciana Parish. Why would you ask for that? Because technically it is a homicide, but the state of Louisiana is doing or carrying out the homicide. So, y'all, I can Again, we didn't get this direct from Angola, but I've seen these type of Department of Corrections memos, if you will. It talks about the purpose is to set forth procedures to be followed for the lethal injection of those who condemned offenders that are sentenced to death. And it talks about who it applies to, which is all the people I told y'all about and the inmates, if they're female, which is only one now, Antoinette Frank. It says the policy. It is the Secretary's policy the Department shall carry out the death penalty in accordance with the provisions of the Louisiana Revised Statutes. So, y'all, that's the law. All execution processes shall be performed in a professional, humane, sensitive, and dignified manner. Execution shall be conducted at Louisiana State Penitentiary, otherwise Bloody Angola. And the warden of that facility is responsible for carrying out the death sentence on the date established by the sentencing court. All right, so the next rule is incarceration prior to execution. Well, it says male offenders sentenced to death shall be incarcerated at Bloody Angola, and female offenders sentenced to death shall be incarcerated at the LCIW, that's the Women's Prison in St. Gabriel, Louisiana, until the time for execution. The warden shall incarcerate the offender in a manner affording maximum protection to the general public, self-explanatory, and the employees of the department and the security of the institution. And female offenders shall be transported to the Louisiana State Penitentiary for execution as defined by the Secretary. And I can tell you that means they're going to move them to the death house, just like they do the males. Yep. Also, it has a section on mental competency. Basically, y'all have heard us talk about that. You can't be executed if they say you are
mentally incompetent.
Yeah, right. So the death warrant. The death warrant, y'all, comes down from the courts, but it says upon receipt of a death warrant, the Secretary, being the Secretary of the Department of Corrections, shall send written notification, including a copy of the warrant, to the following: the warden at Angola, the warden at LCIW, if appropriate, the Women's Prison, the condemned offender through the appropriate warden's office, the governor through the governor's executive council, et cetera, the clerk of each court of appeal, and the chairman of the Louisiana Board of Pardons. And it goes on and says that communications. The Secretary shall establish a direct and encrypted communication system with the governor's office that ensures the secure communication of information related to the condemned offender. And it goes on, get some more of that. Now, to the media. The media may contact the warden.
Yeah, and when you're talking about media, obviously, y'all, anytime there's an execution, really anywhere in the United States, the media plays a big role in that. Right. They are all covering that. It's not something that happens every day, and of course with the political ties to things like executions, the media is all over it. So some other things that the media do relative to the rules that they have to follow. And there's one of them here that says if the warden, condemned offender, and attorney consent, they can interview but you have to schedule a time convenient for the institution. So I've seen interviews in the past with people who were eventually executed, and the media is allowed to go in and interview them, assuming that the warden and the offender and the offender's attorney grant that. Right. Should the demand for interviews be great? So if it's very, very high profile and you've got 20 different outlets wanting to interview with this individual, the warden may set a day and time for all the interviews in one day to kind of knock them all out. And then he may specify whether the interviews shall be conducted individually or in like a press conference fashion. If there's too many requests, obviously you can't fill all those requests. So you may say, well, we'll do a press conference. Everybody can be in the room at the same time and ask questions. I've never seen it press conference style with the actual condemned personally, but it's possible. No employee, including the employee witnesses to the execution, except for the Secretary of Prisons or the warden or someone they designate shall communicate with the press regarding any aspect of the execution. Right. So they're trained. They know how to speak to the press, and so that's they don't want CO Hayes, who just started at Angola 2 months ago, to go out there and talk about his hair was on fire.
Yeah, he was
something
flopping around.
Yeah. They're trained to
and generally it's real short and sweet. And such and such was condemned to death, and he died or was pronounced dead at such time.
That's right. And you may wonder about visits, and we'll tell you a little bit about that. And of course, in the past, we've covered cases with Sister Helen Prejean where she would visit the condemned just prior to them being executed. And the warden can approve those special visits for the condemned offender. The condemned offender shall not be required to visit with non-staff visitors that the condemned offender doesn't wish to see. So if it's a family member that maybe he's estranged from and they want to see him, he can say no, and you can't make him, right? So the condemned offender also shall be allowed visits with family, friends, and private clergy as approved by the warden. Visits will normally terminate by 3:00 p.m. on the day of the execution, except visits with a priest, minister, religious advisor, or attorney. You remember we told you about Sister Helen Prejean up until the time that the condemned was walking
down the hall.
She was
walking.
She was
they'll
with him.
They'll let them sit and pray with him, and they'll take them out and put them in the room, and then they do the death walk.
That's right. And so there's a lot that goes into when someone is, say, 30 days out from an execution. There's a lot that goes into that. The execution team, as they call it, begins conducting training exercises. They actually drill where they're going to strap them down to apply. If you're doing lethal injection, like in Angola's case,
and they'll have a correctional officer that plays the part of the inmate, and they come in, more commonly referred to as a tie down team, that amongst correctional officers, and they know exactly what they're doing. Each person has a certain area to grab and everything else.
Yeah, and they also have a minimum of once per week that they drill that from 30 days out all the way up. So they should have 4 drills or training exercises prior to that actually taking place. And then 14 calendar days prior to the scheduled execution, the Secretary of Prison shall give either written or verbal notice of the date and time of the execution to the victim's parents or guardian, spouse, and any adult children who have indicated they desire such notice. The named party shall be given the option of attending the execution. Within 3 days of receipt of notification, the named party shall notify the Secretary's office, either verbally or in writing, of their intention to attend. So they send out those notices at least 2 weeks prior to that execution. And the warden at Louisiana State Penitentiary shall have the condemned offender complete the request for clergy witness, instructions for disposal of property, and funeral arrangements. So that's got to be freaky.
Right, all the way through.
You're 14 days out, and now you're making your own funeral arrangements.
Yeah, wow.
Now, approximately 10 days prior to the scheduled execution date, the warden shall notify the following individuals of the date and time of the execution: the Louisiana State Police, the West Feliciana Parish Sheriff, the West Feliciana Parish Coroner, the condemned offender's clergy representative, and the Secretary shall select media representatives, basically those in the media that are allowed to be in to witness that execution.
Right.
Approximately 7 days out of the execution date, the Secretary shall notify the warden of the witnesses, the names of the witnesses selected, and approximately 7 days out, the warden shall order that the condemned offender be constantly monitored.
Right.
A log, get this, y'all, this is very interesting. A log entry must be made every 15 minutes that must include movement, mood changes, meals served, showers, telephone calls, etc.
Yeah, that's when they move them to the death house.
Yes, and in 5 calendar days prior to the execution, access to the lethal injection room shall be restricted to only people approved to have access to that room.
Right.
Approximately 12 to 36 hours prior to the execution, the condemned offender shall be transferred from death row and housed in the execution building.
Yeah.
The 15-minute log shall continue to be maintained.
Right.
And the following events shall take place upon the condemned arrival's execution.
Well, so basically, y'all, then the deputy warden or chief of security at Angola assigns security personnel to staff entrances and checkpoints. And the deputy warden shall ensure that the condemned offender's property is inventoried in front of the condemned offender. Y'all imagine that, right?
Yeah.
And they get to say, I want to send this to.
Wow.
Then they get to say, I want to give this to whomever, a family member, other inmates, whatever. All communications equipment shall be tested, including primary and secondary communication with the governor's office. That's in case they get the reprieve at the last minute and they can't say governor was calling and give them a reprieve and the phone didn't work.
Yeah,
or
it was busy.
Yeah, it was, and the secretary's office and the Louisiana State Police Command Center on the morning of and 1 hour prior to the scheduled execution. They make sure it's all working, y'all, back to the lines of communication. And the warden at Angola shall receive updates from security personnel on crowd control demonstrations, et cetera, as needed. Now, every execution is advertised and it'll be on the news, and you always have the people protesting outside the gate for and against the death penalty. So, and it first states the deputy warden at LSP shall brief the warden on tension level with the prison population as needed. Now, this happens. Anytime they put everybody on lockdown when they do the executions, and because they don't want riots and stuff like that, right? And naturally, the emotions are high. They're
Sure.
killing one of their own. And the warden shall advise the secretary of any unusual activity. All right, time and place. The execution shall take place at the Louisiana State Penitentiary between the hours of 6 p.m. and 9 p.m. All right, witnesses. The witnesses shall be over 18 years of age, and all witnesses shall agree to sign the report of execution. The execution shall take place in the presence of the following witnesses: the warden or his designee, the coroner for West Feliciana, a physician chosen by the warden. Naturally, somebody's got to say they're dead, right? A competent person selected by the warden to administer the lethal injection, which is interesting. That you never know who it's going to be. A priest, minister, or religious advisor, if the offender so requests. So,
yeah,
the not less than 5 nor more than 7 other witnesses are required by law to be present. The witnesses shall be selected as follows. 3 of the witnesses shall be members of the news media selected by the secretary from the following categories: representative from the Associated Press, a rep from selected from the media persons requesting to be present. So a lot of them requested, and they just picked whomever, by lottery system, whatever. So, and one of them is going to be present from the parish where the crime was committed, and a representative selected from all other media persons requested to be present. So that's how they get the 3. These witnesses must agree to act as pool reporters for the remainder of the media present, meaning they have to share their shit, y'all, and meet with all media representatives immediately following execution. That's where the press conference comes in. And up to 2 witnesses may be victim relationship witnesses. If more than 2 victim relationship witnesses desire to attend the execution, the secretary can select from the interested parties the 2 victim relationship witnesses who shall be authorized to attend. So basically, it's the same amount, but a whole bunch of the victim's family members want to. The Secretary of Department of Corrections gets to choose who it is, right? And the remaining witnesses shall be selected by the secretary. So Witnesses are not required to be citizens of the state of Louisiana, and all persons selected as witnesses shall sign that same agreement by witnesses to the execution prior to being put in the execution room. All right. So what happens? The execution team. The warden at Angola shall appoint and remove all members of the execution team at his discretion. The execution team shall consist of the warden of Angola, an escort team consisting of an escort team leader and at least 6 additional members, and an IV team, very important, consisting of an IV team leader and a single IV team member. So,
yeah, and we'll get into that. So the escort team is all correctional employees with the training and experience of escorting secured offenders on behalf of the department. So you got, look, they're escorting you to the death chamber.
Right. And
there's all kinds, you might freak out.
Even though they select them, they have to volunteer to be selected. They're just not picking Sally Sue out of the tower and saying, you got to be on the escort team.
Yeah. And they have specific training for that. Right. And then the IV team, you have an IV team leader and an IV team member, and they shall be individuals with at least 1 year professional experience in the following specialty areas. 1, phlebotomist, 2, emergency medical technician, 3, paramedic, or 4, military corpsman with training in phlebotomy. So the members of that IV team must remain certified in their profession and must fulfill any continuing education requirements of their profession. So they're not just, again, letting someone from the guard shack go down there and inject or push a button or however.
The main thing is inserting the IV. Remember the story we had on the inmate that I think maybe it was out of Alabama. Yeah, the one out of Alabama where they tried for like 2 hours to find
Couldn't find
a
vein. Yeah. So they want, obviously, a professional in that situation. And the execution team must have participated in a minimum of at least 2 practices prior to participating in the actual execution. Now, you might wonder what kind of training the execution team gets. So we're going to give you a little bit of their training schedule. When no execution date has been set, okay, so there's no executions on the books to be held, the members of the execution team shall train at least once every 6 months at a time established by the warden. The escort team and the IV team may train independently of the other members of the execution team. When the execution date has been set, the execution team shall train at least weekly at times established by the warden. So if you're 30 days out, like we said, you're going to get 4 training sessions before the actual execution. Training required. In addition to other qualifications, the execution team shall train as a whole when the training schedule requires weekly training. Members of the team shall participate in training as a unit and in 1 or more drills with all members enacting their individual responsibilities.
Right. And I hate to equate to like a NASCAR pit crew, but they get it down to where it's seamless.
Yeah. It's muscle memory almost. All training of the members of the execution team shall be documented. It's very important that they have actual evidence of the training and the execution procedures that follow that. The execution shall be conducted in accordance, obviously, with all that training. No cameras or recording devices, either audio or video, shall be permitted in the execution room. Right. The witnesses shall enter the witness room where they receive a copy of the condemned offender's written last statement. That's interesting, and I did not know that. If he issues one, he doesn't have to.
And that's in case the audio or something goes out too, right?
Right. And the condemned offender shall then be taken to the lethal injection room by the escorting officers. Once in the room, the condemned offender shall be afforded the opportunity to make a last statement if he desires. Some do, some don't. He shall then be assisted onto the lethal injection table and properly secured to that table. Once the officers exit the room, the warden shall close the curtain to the witness room and signal the IV team to enter.
Right.
The IV team then enters and prepares the condemned offender for execution and exits the room. The warden team then reopens the curtain. So imagine that curtain closes, nothing's hooked up to him. When it reopens, he's hooked up to everything.
And they're also they're protecting the identity of the people who actually insert the IVs.
Yes. The persons designated by the warden at the warden's direction shall then administer by IV injection the appropriate substance in a lethal quantity into the body of the offender until he is deceased.
Right.
So the execution takes place, and then you've got a bunch of stuff that goes on post-execution. Mm-hmm. So at the conclusion of the execution, the coroner or his deputy comes in and they pronounce the condemned offender dead.
Right.
The warden shall advise the secretary that the coroner has pronounced the condemned offender dead.
Right.
The secretary then advises the governor that the execution has been carried out.
Right.
The witnesses shall be escorted from the witness area. Mm-hmm. The body of the condemned offender shall be removed from the room, and disposition of the body shall be in accordance with arrangements made prior to the execution at the condemned offender's request. And the warden then makes a written report citing the manner and date of the execution, which all of the witnesses as well as the warden sign. So he can't put whatever he wants.
Right.
Everybody has to sign that witnessed that. The report is filed with the clerk of court in the parish where the sentence was originally imposed. So that's after that execution of that particular individual.
So y'all, let's go back and talk about it for a minute and break it down piece by piece. Okay. Once the IV is inserted, they reopen the curtain. They will read the death warrant out loud, and they'll give them the chance to say the last words. And some don't say anything, and some might curse, and some might say whatever, right? But it's their last words. And then the warden gives the nod, and the buttons are pushed. You cannot see who it is that's pushing the buttons. That's not if they're behind a wall, and so no one knows, right? And once the coroner comes in and pronounces them dead, the physician is in there naturally, and they say there's no more heartbeat, whatever, and they call in the coroner. Coroner verifies that the inmate is in fact dead. Then they'll close the curtains back. Everybody has to sign the warrant, the papers, like Jim said, and then they will bag and tag the body. Now, most of the people at Angola have been there, like these people that are about to start being executed again by the new governor, that forever. And they don't even have people that can come witness or certainly can afford to, put out a burial, which costs as much as a new car nowadays. And a lot of them are buried, as we told you in previous episodes, at Point Lookout and by coffins that the inmates make, et cetera. So it's a real detailed, lengthy process. And, the sheriff is there. Everyone's there, and they make everyone sign it so that nobody can come back later on and say, oh, it was cruel and it was unusual, or, y'all did this and you disrespected him in this way or whatever.
Right. And certainly, you're going to expect, and this happens in executions all over the country where they protest the death penalty.
Right. Anti-death penalty.
And you're certainly going to have that there at the facility. And there's actually a place for those people to stand outside and
just as well as the ones that are pro-death penalty.
That's right.
And they keep them separated, y'all, outside the front gates of bloody Angola. And they'll come out at some point and say the execution is complete, and then they passed at whatever time the coroner calls it. And that's another reason a coroner comes in. Physician can say no longer breathing, no longer has a heartbeat. Coroner has to come in and say, okay, then he's officially dead at 6:07 p.m. or whatever.
Right, and
that's what goes on the death certificate too.
Yeah.
at the time.
Yeah. Pretty wild stuff. And, you may wonder, well, what if it's a woman because they house those at Louisiana Correctional Institute for Women, LCIW, as it's known. And just quickly, those offenders, everything is pretty much the same as far as procedure, except for when those female offenders receive that death sentence and they're incarcerated at LCIW, they house them in a block known as the Leo cell block at LCIW. And on the day of the execution, that's actually when they transfer them to Louisiana State Penitentiary. So they actually got to take that bus ride, which has got, I'm sure agonizing.
Trippy, right. Yeah.
Because that's you're going to be your last ride for all intents and purposes. But outside of that, pretty much the process stays exactly the same. Now, something that is interesting is the amount of paperwork involved in one of these things. They actually have, and I have copies of when death warrants are signed. For example, I have one here this is when Bobby Jindal was governor of Louisiana. And just to tell you what they say, it says, "Dear Governor Jindal, in accordance with," and they read the revised statute, "please find a enclosed copy of the original death warrant. This warrant was signed by judge," insert judge's name, "on insert date, and the execution is scheduled for insert date, and will advise you of any updates." So they send that out to make sure the governor knows, because at that point, only the governor can stop that execution. So definitely he needs to be made aware that it's going to take place. In addition to that, they have papers that they send out to the warden at the penitentiary, at Louisiana State Penitentiary at that time, with what we told you, clergy requests, funeral arrangements, all those sorts of things.
You do with state government has a shit ton of paperwork, and
especially in a situation
like this.
Like
this.
The
ultimate, right?
Yeah, you don't want to drop the ball on having all your ducks in a row.
And the reason they have all these forms is because in the past something's been messed up or something's been challenged.
And here in the state of Louisiana, and I know we've talked about this before, and Woody's talked even a little bit about this on Real Life Real Crime, but with the new leadership at governor in the state of Louisiana, being such a focus on crime, with this new governor, and you're going to probably see those executions rolling through at a high rate.
It's coming. In Alabama, just successfully completing the first one, pure nitrogen. Anyway, the Louisiana is now looking at that as a possibility also, as are several other states. And some other states have already approved. They just hadn't used it yet. But Jeff Landry was the Attorney General, y'all. You have to keep this in mind. It's not a political show, but the Attorney General, being the top law enforcement officer in the state, he knows every one of these cases. He's seen them. He's read them. His people have briefed him on them, and he knows the true horror and the evil in it. And he's going, more importantly, he's just a big believer in the law, following the letter of the law. What the judge says and what the people voted on, and what the law states, he's going to carry it out.
He's going to carry it out, and he even made some statements, y'all, at a recent press conference where he said, the people have already spoken, and that's why these individuals are in the position that they're in, and he considers it his responsibility to carry out the wishes of the people. And also, he looks at it as the state of Louisiana made a promise to those victims' families.
That's right.
And I'm not going to break that promise.
Right. Another thing is he is a proponent of following the law, but on the flip side of that is, to the advantage of the offender, he follows the appeals process, and they go for 20, 25, however many years. So he's not going to do it. He's not going to rush something, right? He's going to make sure all avenues have been exhausted in court. All appeals have been exhausted. But ultimately, that last call is going to come down to him.
That's right.
And I bet you in the execution chamber, that little phone on the wall is not going to be ringing.
Yeah. It would have to take a remarkable piece of evidence to
something.
pop up.
No, something. If something came forward or something, some miracle thing or whatever. Look, we don't want anybody to be executed incorrectly, but I believe that the people spoke, and I believe in the process. And I know a lot of people hate the idea of the death penalty, but you haven't seen what I've seen. And I'm telling you, I don't care how big a proponent or opponent you are of the death penalty. If the shit that I've seen happen to anyone that you love, you'd be flopping sides.
Right. And, by the time that execution takes place, all those appeals have been exhausted.
20 plus years.
Yeah. I mean, when you're getting to 30 days out, they don't have any appeals left, and short of a flat out miracle. And look, y'all, have there been people that have been on death row and then been exonerated?
Yeah,
yes,
absolutely.
but it is so rare you wouldn't believe it.
But that goes back to my point of the appeals process. I'm not against it.
Yeah.
I think it takes too long, but I'm not against it because somewhere during that appeals process, they got DNA evidence or they got whatever, and they overturned the conviction, or at least got them off of death row.
Yeah.
And they were like, there's maybe not enough here to say you're not guilty, but
right, and that's usually what will happen.
We'll give you life in prison instead. And they're glad to get it because they know they're guilty as hell, and they just happen to not beat it, but happen to put such a conflict on appeal that they're like, okay, I'll take that deal.
Yeah, maybe they find someone that, they'll find something in that court record that shouldn't have happened, and it doesn't mean the person didn't do it. It just, what they'll do is they will
rather than try it and go through, put the family and everybody through it all again.
Yeah, they'll offer clemency and give that person a life sentence versus the death penalty. But it doesn't mean they're out of jail. It doesn't mean they didn't do it. It just means there was a technicality
whole lot of
somewhere.
people that are dying in Angola, not by execution, that were slated for execution.
Yes. Yeah. Indeed.
For that very reason.
So that is, we wanted to bring that to y'all today. We thought that was really interesting, the process of preparing to die, preparing for that execution, from the staff's, eyesight, I guess.
Yeah, basically the rules and the procedures for death, and rules and procedures for everything, right? And
that's right.
And Louisiana per capita before John Bell Edwards executed more people than anybody in the United States.
Yeah.
More than Texas. Well, I mean, Texas has a bigger population and more people on death row, but per capita, we did. And it is what it is. However you feel about it, we're just telling you straight up facts and the laws and the rules and the procedures.
That's right.
Pretty crazy.
Pretty crazy.
And it's going to be coming back up soon.
Yep.
So,
yep.
And then I think, I never got to witness one. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you hadn't got to witness one, but you might have put a couple people there.
I put them there.
Matter of fact, I know you did.
Yeah, I did that, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
So,
well, everybody pays for it eventually.
That's right.
For
you're gonna pay for it one way or another.
Yeah.
Whether you're facing your maker or facing that table in the execution room.
Amen to that.
We want to say thank you to our sponsors. We want to say thank you to our patron members. We love y'all.
Shout out to Factor and Hello Fresh,
Factor
man.
and
They've been with us for a long time.
And both great meal deals, man. It's just love, and we appreciate them. But our patron members, we love y'all, and we thank you so much. The show couldn't run without you. I'm actually going to record something this week. Jim carried me last week. I had something come up, but I'm going to put up a little something that I have a little knowledge on. I think it's going to blow your mind.
You're going to drop a little knowledge for the patron member, a little bonus episode.
A little bonus. little bonus speakage about stuff that you don't know, and maybe some places you won't be going anymore. I gotta tell you about it.
Yeah.
So love and appreciate each and every one of y'all. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and look, if you're a local to the Baton Rouge, Livingston, really the Louisiana area, if you're local to Louisiana and you're interested in sponsoring the show, we have some special things that we're doing just for local businesses.
Absolutely.
So reach out to me. You can just you can shoot me a message on Facebook, or you can email bloodyangola@gmail.com.
Yeah.
And I'll follow up with you and give you the information.
Remember, y'all, we can give you numbers all day long on how podcasts are now the new medium people go to because it's on-demand entertainment and they can do it whenever. But, hey, we won Best History Podcast in the world this year, the People's Choice Award, which is huge. We have a huge listener base and very, very loyal fans. So, and Jim started out with local leaders. We started out with the Paint Podcast first, but then the local leaders.
Yep.
And every business, has its own story, but we also believe in your product. We want to promote it and let everybody know about it.
That's right. That's right. So until next time, I'm Jim Chapman.
And I'm Woody Overton,
your host of Bloody
Angola,
a podcast 142 years in the making.
Complete story of America's bloodiest prison.
Peace.
I walk a straight line, shackled and chained. Oh, gruesome Gertie is calling my name. There is no mercy in this penitentiary. Just ask the Hill String Gang, Rango